Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you again for having or giving us the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you all this evening. My name is Brett Wolfe. I'm the Technology Evangelism Manager for the East Region at Microsoft. I live here in Charlotte, so when I'm not traveling, I do call it home. Although still relatively new to the area, about a year, but certainly really do enjoy it. And part of our mission as we're in the community is certainly helping people to learn, but also to advance the platform adoption of Windows, and that means both Windows on the phone, Windows on the server, Windows in the cloud, Windows on the client, you name it. And so today we're going to blend a lot of these different topics together. Also with me tonight is Brian Hitney. Brian is a technology evangelist here in North Carolina, and so and is deep in all things cloud, Windows 8, and Windows Phone. And so what I'm going to actually spend a little bit of time doing this evening is setting the stage and giving you a little bit of context for what we would like to be able to do. And then as I'm taking you through the environment, the demo, and building an app itself to show you how easy it is, Brian's actually going to be just, in essence, milling around the crowd to make sure we can answer questions. So we're going to kind of tag team here rather than switching presentation mode for the next hour. And then we'll get into some of the virtual environments that we have set up for you to be able to utilize Windows 8 if you don't already have it installed. So I'm going to talk about prerequisites this evening. I'm going to talk about different ways if you can't follow along, if you don't have a laptop with you, you can do that. If you don't have Windows 8, you can still do half of everything tonight. And then ultimately, the goal would be to continue it on after here. And so with that being said, here's really what we want to cover. My ultimate goal is that you'll walk away and you'll have learned at least one thing new this evening. And the second piece of that is there is, many people would say, well, why are you talking about Windows 8 development from to this particular audience? And we've been at the Windows 8 development story for about a year and a half, a little bit more than a year and a half ago, when we first announced it in September of 2011. And one of the things, the big shifts that it really opened up was that from not just a business-to-consumer or business-to-business application scenario, or even just line of business to your internal constituents, it really changed the volume of devices out there for the consumer. And with that, there's a lot of different things when you're building apps for consumers that oftentimes, whether you're a seasoned developer, whether you're new or you're a hobbyist, you just don't tend to think about. And what it's created really, and this is over the last 4 or 5 years, is a change in the application development lifecycle and how quickly, by developing an application for your consumers or your company developing that application, putting it into a store that they trust, whether that's an iTunes store or whether that's Google Play, whether that's Windows Store or Windows Phone Marketplace, is inherently you're giving people the capability to interact with you in a different way. One of those interaction points is feedback. And we all say we want feedback, but there's similar to any time you open yourself up, when you publish an application for the first time and you get the end user feedback as the developer or as the maintainer of that system, it happens like that. You get ratings, you get emails, you get bug fixes right away. And that change from, I'm going to spend 6 months to develop, deploy, and test this application shrinks all the way down to about 6 days sometimes. And so corporations are looking at, how do we iterate on the capability of the application? How do I look at the architecture? How do I maintain it from an infrastructure perspective to be able to scale it up on the back end and provide those services in a typically connected world, but also in a disconnected and an on and off state? And so there's a lot of implications both to the development of the application, but then also from the infrastructure side as well. And so ultimately, tonight what we want to be able to do is take you through really quickly what on the development side that looks like and get you to develop an app for the first time. And that application is as much to put it into the store so you can have the end-to-end experience. So if you're part of the process, you have the capability from a day-to-day to have the experience across the entire spectrum. The flip side of it is there is a notion that there's money to be made if this is something that you're either experienced at, you're seasoned, or even if you're new. that there are certain things that are not that complicated to do, and there's different tools outside of traditional development environments, that this really is I will say it's a huge opportunity. I'm going to cover a little bit about that before we just dive right in. And so that's really what I'm going to take you through a little bit, is about here's what the store looks like. Then I'm going to cover off to get you started on Windows 8. And again, if you can follow along tonight, it's great. Brian's will be out there to answer questions. But if not, we're going to make this available. And we have everything that I'll go through tonight is free for download, or it's going to be something that you can continue on, whether it's the virtual environment, everything, all the templates we've posted publicly. And then as Dave had mentioned, that we've even gone as far as setting up the group account. So if you don't want to create your own developer account to publish to the store, because it is $49, and I'll cover that, you can still do it as part of the group. So whether it's tonight or over the next week or two, everybody hopefully will see the opportunity to be able to do that. Now, what we're going to cover, so I'm going to take that for the first hour. We'll cover them after the quick break, is Brian's actually going to come up and show you the virtual environment we have set up. With everything I cover tonight will be in a virtual machine in the cloud that you can just use. So you can do a lot of what we have tonight on Windows 7 if you have that in terms of the tools and everything else. But once you get to the publication point, you have to, in testing with Visual Studio, you have to be on a Windows 8 machine. And so we've even set that up, and we'll give you access for free for a number of days to that virtual machine. So if you want to take it so far, you'll be able to do that. So hopefully between tonight and follow on, we give you enough assets and enough learning tools to really go deep and get your first application in the store at the end of the day, and again, learn something new. So along those lines, we also have additional templates that we have posted out there, and we have this particular program going on right now. For every application that you publish to the Windows Store or the Windows Phone Marketplace or store, you actually receive $100, up to $1,000 for each. So if we have 5 or 6 different templates that you'll see how easy they are to customize and get you going, that if nothing else, while you're learning something, you'll make $100. And so even if it costs you the first $49 to open your developer account, it'll be $100 then. You'll make $51, and then each one going forward will be basically up to $1,000 for Windows 8. And then if you want to do the same thing for Windows Phone over the next couple months, it'll be the same thing. So your opportunity here is not just to learn, but maybe you make a little bit of money, even if you don't make it rich, if you're not the next Instagram or Facebook. And then finally, if you really want to take it, the tool I'm going to be showing you tonight is a third-party tool. Again, it'll be free for download, but they are also having a competition that you can see more details about through the end of kind of middle of June. They're going to be judging it, but there's some fairly rich, I'd say, prizes and monetary awards by participating in their program. And a lot of these third-party tools, if you think about the middleware to develop an application in a very visual way and almost a configuration way, that they're kicking off different incentive programs and reward programs as well. One called Game Maker, if you're ever familiar with that, I think the prize is up to $25,000. And so and that's just for doing the basics, and it doesn't have to be super high quality. You can make some money at this. So ultimately, I'm going to spend, before I jump in and we go hands-on, I'm going to spend a little bit, if you haven't seen it, how many people have Windows 8 today? Okay, so we have about half the room. And so when you think about the store of Windows 8, it's going to be your portal to any and all applications. So when you first fire it up, there's a basic series of applications that Microsoft has built, and it's on the machine. But if it's not a corporate delivered application, it's going to come through the Windows Store. And so there's different ways from a deployment perspective that you as a corporation can actually set up your own Windows Store, for example. So what I mean by that, and I'll just kind of flip over to it real quick, is you'll notice right here that on my desktop, I'm going to come out of my duplicate mode, and if I come here, this is my start screen. So not in essence, it's the start screen versus the start button. There is going to be a Windows update later this year. We've heard some rumors about that. But this is also then the actual interface. One of the things that I have here is this right here, which is, you can see this application right here in the middle called Company Portal. This is literally, and I'm not necessarily on our network, so I probably have to, once I authenticate, it's going to ask me for some things. But this is Microsoft's IT store. So for line of business applications for the deployment of Office, we have not a public-facing store, but a company portal that I can just go pick and choose applications. And this is one of the ways, again, from a line of business perspective, that you'll be able to deploy the applications. And because I'm not logged in, I'm not going to be able to access to that. But I just want to kind of get you the idea, ultimately, what the App Center, and this, we call it the Corporate App Center, is going to be able to do from a deployment perspective. And so, with that being said, though, on the consumer side then, again, kind of back to the general premise of the business model, is today we have roughly, there's tens of thousands, I'll say, applications in the Windows Store. From an opportunity perspective, relative to other stores in the marketplace, who have hundreds of thousands, early mover advantage on this thing makes a significant difference. You don't have to be the next Angry Birds to make this a revenue stream if you have a particular business model as an individual. So the ecosystem, when you think about it, is not just from a corporate perspective that oftentimes you think about USA Today, you think about large consumer brand names, that the applications will be for free. But they're going to have some kind of reason or monetization model behind that. And sometimes it's advertising, sometimes it could be pay for download, and sometimes it, quite frankly, can be a in-app purchase. And we'll talk about those different things. But ultimately, getting highlighted in the store is one of the most critical things to get to the eyeballs. And so today, through the last, what we've been out in since really, was it October 26th, so for the last now 6 months, we have over 100 million copies of Windows 8 that have been sold. And so when you think about so that's 100 million devices today that have the capability to run Windows 8. And that's a really small sliver. And as many of you know, you think about what's coming to end of life next April. XP. So the number 100 million, I'm going to guess, is only going to go up over the course of the next year because of the natural life cycle. That's been 14 years, and it's been the best product that we've wanted to get rid of for a really long time, probably, because it has been a great product. But at the same time, that number will continue to go up. But what you'll notice is that not only just in the U.S. and the marketplace, but across the world, and the number of markets we came into in our first rendition has been overly broad in terms of its reach, but also in terms of its quality and its depth as well. And so what that presents to you then is really an opportunity. And at the end of the day, even for people just beginning this particular time frame over the next 6 to 9 months, and that's Brett's opinion, that's not the opinion of Microsoft, but I'm saying based off the trajectory I see in terms of volume of apps, volume of devices, the early mover advantage to get into this on an individual or a startup or other company basis is now. And this is an example of Kevin Ashley is actually a peer of Brian's and mine on the West Coast. And so obviously loves to develop applications, but at the same time, to do it on his personal time is a hobby. It's a passion of his. So over the course of time, he built this card games chess, which is basically a portal into a series of card games that he built that are very popular, that most people tend to download on their mobile devices. Well, Kevin spent, it was weeks, it wasn't months, it was weeks developing this application, and it's not something he's going to generate overnight. But through advertising, in terms of his monetization, the way he's trying to make money on this, and he just did it as a passion, by January, so literally within 2 months, he was up to the point where he's making $30,000 a month through this application, and it looks nice, but it's not it's not going to win a design award from a graphic design perspective. And again, that's just somebody getting into market first with this type of application. Games are actually, in general, about 60% of all mobile or tablet applications or really becomes games. And people try to actually download it at a variety of times. And so we share this because he's just somebody who's doing it in the evenings and loved to do it and was able over the course of time now, he's certainly into within 5 or 6 months. He's certainly into triple or six figures in terms of the amount of money he's making, again, on advertising, which is one of the ways, to make money. And so hopefully that's a little bit of an encouragement, just to say, hey, it's worth a shot, because you just never know on what you're going to find interest into at the end of the day. So that revenue model that we have when you're publishing an application, again, regardless of if you're a company or if you are an individual, is 70%, meaning for every dollar that somebody spends on downloading on the downloads, it's going to be $70 in your pocket. Microsoft keeps 30% for the overhead. As you get up to $25,000 accrued and made, that percentage goes to your favor up to 80%. And so relative, again, to standards in the marketplace, this is, again, outside of and above the norm that's out there today. And again, if you think about the volume at the end of the day, if you have a richer percent of the dollar that you're keeping, and you don't have as much competition in that marketplace, even if we don't have quite the market share that we desire as a company yet, that opportunity, as you could see, Kevin is able to capture. And so, in order to publish to the store, and this is kind of coming back to what we talked about in terms of prerequisites, is as an individual, you can sign up for a developer account with Microsoft, and it's $49. For a business, it's $99, right? And that's basically to handle the infrastructure and do everything we need to do. At the end we have signed up the organization, for the business one, so we can have multiple publications to it over the course of time, and that $100 for the contest will come back, to the organization and to the charities that they go. Question?
Quick question, differentiation. If I'm sitting there and I start my own business just for the revenue and stuff, would it be an individual or would it be a business?
In that particular case, it would be a business account versus an individual, right? But it's $50 a year. The delineation tends to be, Brian, what's the delineation on the business versus individual again?
Well, really with individual, you're going to be putting in your social security number for tax
Oh, that's right.
purposes, and then for a business, it will require you to have the tax.
Yeah. So in your case, it's one and the same. So save the $50 and publish it that way. So the question was, what was the difference? Sorry about that. And so at the end of the day, if you want to charge, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's not the most interesting part of tonight, is just the pricing model that we have. It starts at free. You can do one, $1.49 up to $999.99 if you so choose. And then ultimately, there's every 50 cents you can go up. The other interesting thing, though, is to think through. And TechCrunch actually had an interesting article about games specifically. But when you think about the evolution of what is often referred to as the app economy, is the initial way to make money was on pure pay for download. 99 cents per application, that's the way you make money. It kind of moved to advertising. Now that's kind of continued to evolve to in-app purchases. And then you have some combination thereof that people are trying to make money on a variety or a multiple or volume based of applications. And so there's just different ways you can think about it if money or revenue is the driving force behind what you're trying to do. There's just different things that you want to think through, because if you want an ad-supported model, then you have to account for that in your user interface. As an example, you just need to leave some room for it, for something to produce the ads for the consumer to do. And in Kevin's case, again, Kevin Ashley, when you're playing solitaire, I don't know about you, but if I've lost 10 times in a row, I'm going to keep going. So if you're in that application for a while, advertising would make sense because the user sees lots of different ads. And so ultimately then, what's nice then is that you actually have the capability to do it in process, and you don't have to have a lot of experience in terms of deep development to actually execute on it. And what I mean by that, if you wanted to say, hey, effectively, most people, and again, I forget the exact percentage today, but the large majority of applications today are not paid applications. Most of them are free, and they either have a pay to a full-featured model or an in-app purchase. What we want to be able to do is actually give you the capability to do that through configuration. So rather than having to build application code inside of it, that ultimately when you can give time-based trials just through you'll see this if you develop your first app and you put it into the store, you can choose, right? You basically have a free trial period, and you can say, I'm going to give it to them free for 14 days. And the store and Microsoft takes care of that for you. Versus you can implement code to check for that, and you can say, if then do particular statements, but and or actions or enable new features. But ultimately, sometimes you just want to press the easy button, and we give you the capability to do that without any particular code. So that's the store. It's kind of the environment we're within. Now, oftentimes you have the back end of that again in terms of features. If you think about basic things with games, you want to have a leaderboard, and we have back-end cloud services that you want to manage to deploy and get those things in there. Contents is a huge capability, again, from a cloud perspective that you often want to be able to implement into mobile games. But what I'm going to take you through then for the next 35 minutes is just a quick walkthrough of what it would take and what you can actually do to develop an app for the first time to go through the whole experience. So the tools that I'm going to use, again, all are free, and here's a listing of them. I'm going to be using Windows 8. Again, for the development, you can use Windows 7, and the tool here, Construct 2, and the templates that we're going to use, you can use on a Windows 7 machine. But again, to compile it and to push it into the Windows Store, you'll need Windows 8 at some point. And Brian will take you through a virtualized environment we want to be able to do. The templates themselves, here's a kind of a shortened URL that you'll be able to download those themselves, and you'll see what I mean by template. And then the Windows Store account, which you can sign up at windowsstore.com, you'll have to register there. Or again, you'll have the capability to use the groups account as well. And so ultimately, those are the majority of things. If I think of something else, I'll just go out and we'll show it. And then I'll be quiet now, at least relative to the slide deck, and we'll just kind of take you through it real quick. Sound good? So when you look at the starting point, when I mentioned it before, and we're going to start with a game. So what Brian and I have the opportunity to do a lot is try to give people the capability all the time to learn the variety of the platforms themselves. And so whether that be custom development, whether that be through Visual Studio, whether that be, again, Windows Server or deployment or the cloud, over the course of time, things have continued to evolve relative to the development environment. And we ran a workshop on campus, at the Microsoft campus about 2 weeks ago. And depending upon where you've been at over the course of time in your development experience, Visual Studio can actually, or custom development sometimes can be overwhelming. And so one of the things that we notice is that sometimes actually building a game is a common thing that most people can come up with an idea, because sometimes the idea for an application, quite frankly, is the most difficult part of it. And then you got to build the user interface, and then you have to think about what you're doing X, Y, and Z. And we have found that similar to the ecosystem, just trying to build a game for the first time in common environments, and a game can be very, very basic stuff, through a tool is actually the easiest way to go. And so what I'm going to start with is we actually have, there's a third-party tool, and it's called Construct 2, and it's made by a company actually out of the UK called Skira. And I think that's the right pronunciation. I've heard it about 5 or 6 different ways. It's kind of like Azure or Azure, or I don't know how whatever you want to pronounce it as. But ultimately, it's you can go out to skira.com, and you'll be able to look at the actual tools, and you can download it. And again, I actually have it on USB if you want it. If you have access to internet, feel free to download it now if you haven't already. But I just wanted to share, this is the tool ultimately that I'm going to use. The other thing is we have then posted these actual to GitHub, again, at the aka.ms/templates, different samples of really, really basic games. So that all you have to do is change a few things, and you'll kind of be at a completed state where you can have something of function and form that you'll be able to submit into the store. So right now we have a handful of these. We have them for other platforms that are built into the tool. But tonight, just for sake of simplicity, I'm actually going to use the 8 facts. So we'll just kind of take you through that template, which I downloaded again, and these are all publicly available and free for download as well. So all I've done is downloaded the 8 facts template, and as well as installed the tool of Skira, or Construct 2. And so when I open this up, you'll notice it comes with a design environment. So this is Construct 2, and this is the application itself. I'm going to kind of let these windows kind of fly out for a minute. And let me explain a little bit what you're looking at, both in context of the tool, but also how to customize the template. So when you open it up, we've actually made it relatively straightforward, hopefully, to just make a few tweaks here and have it complete. So one of the things, for example, is all you have to do, you'll notice here on this Customize Game Here tab, all you have to do is double-click these things, and then you're going to change the title. So since we're here in Charlotte, I decided to, hey, let's do 8 fun facts with about Charlotte. We could do, you could do fun facts about the layers of a 8-layer German chocolate cake. You could do anything that you wanted to do, just again to get through the process here. And we're trying to make it very, very straightforward, even if you have no programming or development experience. And so this particular tool, a game is made up of effectively, if you think about layers and events. In events, very similar to if you're in an Excel spreadsheet and you're doing an if-then statement. If this event happens, then do this. And so a game is, quite frankly, just made up of an infinite loop that keeps on looking at the statements in sequence. And that's what this tool allows you to do in a visual or configuration manner. And so what you'll see here is the visual layout. And the only thing you really will want to do to customize the game is to actually change the title of the game. Again, and I've called this Fun Facts About Charlotte. So we could say Fun Facts About South Boulevard, Fun Facts About Waxhaw, Fun Facts About Charlotte Panthers. I was going to make a joke about the Bobcats, but that's too painful sometimes. So I moved from Cincinnati, Ohio, and people are like, oh, you a big football fan? And I said, well, I went from bad to worse when it comes to going from the Bengals fan to a Panthers fan. Is like, it's kind of difficult. It's been tough 15 years or so. And so once you've changed the title, all you have to do when you look at these are different assets on the screen. And if you want to change, just like anything else, if you're in an Excel spreadsheet or you're in a Word document, you double-click the image in this case, and you choose a different image. Right? And so here's the Charlotte skyline. Go out to Bing. I'm assuming that's the only search engine you guys use, so I'll just say Bing. And find yourself a nice image, and then you just open it up in terms of the tool itself. So you can go out here and you can choose a different image. Once you've done that, then you can do other things. You can change the background color by double-clicking on the background. You can change the color of these particular tiles if you want to. But this is really, again, we're just trying to set up a very basic framework to say, hey, here's a really simple game in this case. So it's whack-a-mole, it's fun facts, whatever it may be, to get you started. So the only other customization that you really have to make to this particular template and tool is to actually type in your fun facts. And so what we've done here is literally just made a text file that you want to just change the title of the actual fact itself, and you'll see where that renders itself. And then you just type in text. So Charlotte's the largest city, in North Carolina, 23rd largest in the U.S. It has X, it has Y. Go out to Wikipedia and start taking down notes on whatever topic you feel like doing or whatever you feel like is interesting to other folks in this particular example. So once you've customized, again, changed a couple images to get to learn it, you have the capability then to change the facts themselves. Or, again, very straightforward, the other templates and samples that we have, you'll have the capability then to effectively be done with an application. So within the context of if we actually spent the time doing that, we probably could spend, it took me, it takes you as long to go to Wikipedia and look up 8 facts and type them into a text to Notepad than it does to do anything else. And then all you have to do in this case is this particular example is run the layout. So it's going to test it, in this case, as an HTML5 application in your browser. And so obviously if I click on the one, so it's a touch screen laptop that I have here, City of Charlotte, I click home, I can go to 5, it's settled in 1765, and so forth. And so it gives you the capability, to look at the different the different elements where things might touch, and yep, everything looks like it's working relatively well, and so far, and then if I kind of swipe from the edge, yep, everything looks pretty good. So from a Skira perspective, and again, the other templates, there's 5 or 6 others out there, they're all relatively this straightforward. And ultimately, for the beginner, we wanted to make this the easiest path to get to complete so that you have, again, the entire full experience to go from 0 to 60 fast. And then once you're in the store for the first time, it actually just removes a lot of hurdles that you feel like, I'm not sure where to start. Again, the idea oftentimes is the most difficult thing. The most difficult thing for even a seasoned developer is the user interface. This, again, is not the most glorious looking thing we could have probably done. But at the same time, when you have to come up with the idea, and you oftentimes have to worry about the UI, I'm guessing if you're all a lot like we are, I'm not a designer. You can tell by my dress. My wife has to dress me still. I'm not a designer or color coordinated. And so by us kind of removing a couple of those things, hopefully it makes it an easy path for you to get there. So ultimately, once you're finished with that, all you have to do is export the project. Now, one of the things that you'll notice here is that Windows 8 is only one of the options up here. And again, if you think about this from an individual standpoint, it almost gets to the point of, well, why not target a couple of these different other environments? Windows 8 is just one of them. There's other tools out there that you can look at other cross-platform development. But that way, even if you're, again, a seasoned developer and you know C# and you're a .NET developer, or you know PowerShell well and you can at least script your way into a customized deployment, you absolutely can build a pretty robust game in these tools. And so ultimately, once you're finished here, you choose your platform, because you'll notice that Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8 is also an option. So again, going back to the opportunity from at least a short-term monetary perspective is, hey, at least you try it once. You do it once for Windows 8, once for Windows Phone. You make $200, and if you say, hey, this is for the birds, you're done, and at least we've paid you for your time, and try it out. But it may again spark an idea or a process. Say, hey, this is fun, and I've seen that happen a number of times. That you never know where that innovation, that excitement, and that idea, that all of a sudden you got started on a very basic tool, but then it gives you the motivation to continue on and learn more, and actually build a customized application itself. So all I have to do at this point, again, is choose the mobile desktop environment. In this case, it's a Windows 8. I click Next, and I'm going to say Export. And it's going to export the project that I want to be able to do and run on my machine. So at this point, I'm really done with the tool itself. And basically what I have left to do is I have to compile it in Visual Studio, and then I want to be able to upload it into the store. And so at this point, from a tools perspective, again, Visual Studio, and you would need Windows 8. So what I just showed you could download those templates themselves on Windows 7. Skira will run on Windows 7. And even Windows XP, you'd be fine to do up to this point. If you don't have a Windows 8 machine, or you're not developing on it, it's at this point where you would take these files to your Windows 8 machine, whether it's your own or the one that Brian's going to show you here in a little bit in the cloud, to be able to finish the end of the process in of itself as well. And so all I'm going to do then is open up Visual Studio, and when you're on your machine, or the virtual machine, the cloud share that it's called, environment will already have Visual Studio on it. But you can get a version of Visual Studio for free as well. It's called Visual Studio Express. The only caveat to that is it's a specific for platform, meaning it's Visual Studio Express for Windows 8, Visual Studio Express for Windows Phone. So if you're going to do both, you'll have to actually have 2 downloads, but both are free. And it gives you the capability to do the basic development without having to, again, put out any cash outlay for the tools themselves. And so all I'm going to do is I'll open this project that we just had, and we'll open up the 8-fax template that it just exported. And what you'll find here is that it's brought all those different files that have been generated and created by Construct 2 or Skira into the Visual Studio environment. And let me kind of get rid of my flyouts here. So the only thing left I have to do is, I want to get you to see the screen, is actually choose my certificate. I'm going to create a new one real quickly. Create a test certificate in this case with no password if you really wanted to. I will replace it. And then what you want to do is obviously you want to be able to test it on a Windows 8 machine, right? And all I have to do there is hit F5, hit run on local machine, and what it'll do is actually pop up and show me the application running on this particular device. And as it comes up, very much like the HTML5, I can do the same thing. But the difference is here, again, now that I'm on native, again, if you didn't catch it, it generated an HTML5, basically web application that now is actually running native on the Windows platform, which is a key feature of the new platform. But you'll notice that I'm you can't see I'm touching it, but I can actually, what I'm doing is I'm swiping across to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, or I can go back home. As I swipe in from the side, I have my charms menu. If you look at the settings, what you'll notice here is the settings permission, again, it creates is a standard one that says, hey, this app has permission to use your internet connection. So one of the tips for your store submission is when you go to submit this application, this package up into the store, if you require, in this case, there's nothing about the application that needs the internet. It actually runs fine locally on the machine. There's nothing, I'm not downloading data to get to it. Ultimately, though, anytime you use any resource on this machine, you need a privacy policy. And effectively, that says to the end user, I'm not going to use any of your stuff. And Brian's is a little bit more elaborate than that. It says, I don't want any of your stuff, and I don't need any of your stuff. Right? It doesn't have to be over. Some people make it super elaborate, but it's important because if you check box any of the features that you do use, or if your app actually tries to use it, they'll fail it upon certification because you have to have a privacy policy if you choose those things. But point being is, inside the tool and the app itself, already there. So at this point, I'm going to close that down. We've tested it out. If you have other actual devices, for example, obviously I have a Microsoft Surface, a Windows RT device. You can remote attach that actually through an application for remote debugging and make sure you can test that out. Should run totally fine on an RT or ARM-based device as well. And so ultimately, all I want to be able to do at this point is, before I submit it into the store, is I actually have to create the individual images. And if I come back to here, what I'll show you is this. This is like the app image, the app logo itself. You don't want a white box with X's on it. So basically for the application itself, there's 4 different images or logos that you'll want of different sizes. It can be exactly the same image that basically just has different pixel sizes. So when the app itself comes up, it'll show you there. Or subsequently, if I'm here, and what you want to be able to do, you'll notice there's 2 different tiles sizes. There is large, which this one is large. And did anybody guess what this one would be called? Small. There we go. Not so large. So I basically need small app logo, 30 by 30. I need a large one. I need app, and then I actually need one for the third one is for the smallest, actually the 30 by 30 that you'll need is for the actual store itself for this little guy right here. So those are the 4 you need for your tile. You need big, small. You need for the store itself and the app. So there's 4 logos that are required inside of your application that you want to be able to use and in your submission process. The first time I submitted an app to the store, I actually used Construct 2 to develop the app, and it took me about an hour. And then it took me about an hour to get those 4 images exactly right. And it's not a joke, nor is it an exaggeration. It actually took me longer. And so what I'll do is I'll post a guy on our team actually wrote an image resizer tool to just do it for you. And I was like, it saves me 59 minutes every time I want to submit a store. So so it's called the image resizer tool. And again, it's another easy way for us to be able to give you that capability. And just for grins, I think, if I have it here, where did I put it here? The Windows Store image resizer. I'll kind of show it to you real quick. Actually, what I'm going to do. So all I have to do is drag an image. And so what I mean by that literally is if I say I want to go to my documents or let's say my pictures actually, and here's the Charlotte one, which I've already done that. You just drag it here and it creates for the logo, the small logo, the splash screen, and the store logo out of the one image. And so now all I have to do is basically I can copy these things. I'll copy them. I'll take them into Visual Studio, and I'll be done with it at that point. And I'll actually come up here. And replace all those. So basically at this point, what I want to be able to do is if I come back up here, and I rerun this, what you'll notice is it should come back and it has the images that I just copied in. So once you're done with, so again, all we did is customize this basic application in Construct 2. You open up Visual Studio, you just create that basic step of create test certificate so that it can run. You replace the 4 images, and you should be good to go to actually submit it to the store. So even with having to explain it, it takes us about 25 minutes to do that first one. And so for the next few minutes, what I want to be able to do then is show you really how you go about then submitting it to the store. And when you have Visual Studio, in this case, you can actually start the process right from here. And so when you look at Project, you'll notice under here, there's an option that says Store. And the first step in the store process is to reserve your application name. So just like domains, you're going to have to reserve your app name. You can say, you can make whatever you want to do, CLT Fun Facts, Charlotte Fun Facts, Charlotte Facts, whatever is available, you have the capability to use. And so when I say reserve app, it's going to open up your developer account. So again, this is in terms of the process you'd go through for the first time. Even if you created the app itself, you've downloaded Visual Studio, and you're to this point, you would at this point have to have that developer account where you'd spend the $49 to open up the individual account or $99 for the business, or use the group account as we've set up and mentioned before. And so at that point, what you want to be able to do is, and you'll see that Visual Studio opened me up right to the developer portal, is the app name itself. And so in this case, I've reserved one, but we could say CITPG Charlotte May, just for grins. I don't think anybody's going to get mad if I reserve that name, will they? No? No. Okay. Reserve a name for your app itself. It's going to make sure that, check the database. I'm pretty sure, yep, nobody has taken that name yet. So once I save, I will be good to go. So what you'll notice here is now, as you're going through this, now it's just a wizard-based model, right? I mean, meaning a step-by-step. I'm going to take the selling details. I'm going to get to advanced features. Again, many of which case that we're not going to take advantage of at this point. Age rating and rating certifications, meaning what's the demographic that you're targeting. Typically then, if you're going to use, one of the things that is kind of a hindrance, depending upon, quite frankly, at the end of the day, who's testing your app. Typically I'd say, I think one of the categories, I typically just put 12 and above. Because ultimately, if you're using an internet connection, if you're using a camera as part of your app or on the device, that's by nature of privacy. Again, it's not something, basically a 3-year-old. 3+ is one of those examples. And so what you'll go through basically is you can do these out of order, but these are the different steps you'll go through that you want to set your pricing tier. Well, I'm going to say it's going to be free. Do I want to offer if I wanted to say it was $1.49, that's where earlier in the screenshot I showed you that, hey, do you want a trial period here that can be free? Like, sure, we'll do a 30-day trial period. But I don't have to worry about that from the application side. And then you have the opportunity then to say, okay, what countries of those 200 or so markets out there do you want to actually publish it in? You could say the rest of the world, which kind of sounds like a bold statement, but for now I'm just going to say the United States to make it easy, because what will happen is, obviously, depending upon the content that you have in your application, based off the country there's obviously different cultural norms. There are different acceptability factors and things that we have to test for. And so oftentimes, if you really are just wanting one market, this is the easiest way to go. The other thing that will do, though, is depending upon the settings that people place in their store account. And what I mean by that is if when I'm here, and if I, as an end user, I'm in the Windows Store, I have the capability to say, what are the priority, the preferences I have for my searches. And you can do this if I say settings and I say preferences. One of them is make it easier in my preferred language. So depending upon what the preferred languages are of those countries, it'll predicate what showed up here or what's being shown to the user at the end of the day. And so basically, let's see, come back here. And then you can say release date. So many people, if you're trying to simultaneously launch a number of things, so for example, anybody played Angry Birds before? Handful? Angry Birds Space, I believe, when they first launched it, all platforms at the same time. But obviously development isn't happening at exactly the same minute and hour, that you can schedule things to release on the same day if you have a brand across the different platforms, iOS, Android, Windows 8, Windows Phone, and so forth. So we'll just say, but as soon as it passes, go out there, submit, and then take your category. And this is actually a little bit, I would say, there's probably an obvious one, in terms of games, that this would fit. But it also could fit education, because I have some fun facts in there. It may be, government. It could be other categories, but ultimately I'll just choose games for now. And if you want to pick a subcategory, we're going to go with different ones here and say, I'm going to just go no subcategory. And finally, then you have kind of minimum requirements depending upon what your app's trying to do that you can actually dictate in here as well. So you can make it available to all systems, or you could say, I'm actually relatively memory intensive, and that there's not going to be a good user experience if they don't have 2 gigs. Or they better have DirectX version 9.3 versus 10. And so there's a few minimum requirements you can place in there. It's available to all. The other thing here is obviously from accessibility perspective. I have not tested for accessibility. So I'm not going to click this button, just because I have not actually gone through that particular process. And so I'm not going to go, we don't have to go through each individual one of these, but it literally you're going through this and you're answering questions at the end of the day. And once I go through the advanced features here, that's going to be maybe the last one I go, because we're really not doing anything here in terms of push notifications or making the tile when it's installed on the start screen, meaning here. You'll notice that these on the left-hand side, these are games. This was built by a student actually at Florida State. This is actually from using a tool called AppMobi up in Philadelphia, and then a couple other HTML5 things. But what you'll notice is that these are not using live tiles. These are using live tiles effectively to produce new and current content that brings the user back into the application. And Brian actually, a couple of the apps he's built does a good job at that for himself. So ultimately then, if I go back to there, to the application itself, not using anything there, I'm going to say age rating. Again, I talked about that before. Let's say your safest bet is probably here. And again, that's just a function of the requirements as you go by country. And then finally, what I will do is say cryptography. Does the app call support contain cryptography or encryption? No, it does not. I confirm that you can actually do this widely and I won't get in trouble. So now it basically gives you the option now to upload your package. So you can do it one of 2 ways. In Visual Studio, I can actually upload app packages or I can create them, right? I can edit the manifest. I can do these other things, but I'm just basically going to upload this particular app package, but I have not created it yet. So let me come back here. I actually have to create the package first. My screen's not big enough. I can't get down. It's a good thing for tab. So what this will allow me to do is then just sign into my developer account within Visual Studio and using my Microsoft ID, which I have attached to it. and then I'll be able to associate it with that particular name I just chose as I sign in. So you'll notice I have a couple of different options. I just created this one just now, and I'm going to have to tap it in, aren't I? Next. Here's where you can say if you're uploading a new version of it and you want to give it different version numbers, you can target particular architectures across the board. Not going to do any of that. And I'm actually going to call this 1.1 for now. Sorry for the tabbing. And now I'm going to create the package. Okay. Now, the final step here before you actually just then go back out to the tool and upload it, and then we'll kind of take a break here, is because this will take a minute to run, is it's hard to see because of the transparency is not very high, but it says Launch Windows App Certification Kit. And it's just a tool that will basically run the basics of security, all the performance tests and everything else that Visual Studio will effectively run for you. And it will then give you any particular errors that are very, very common in the applications. It's going to, in essence, tell you before you ever upload it so that you don't do some basic things wrong and then you get to the point where you've waited 5 days for something very, very basic to happen. And so, thanks, Brian. I really appreciate that. So that's the hint. Hey, turn off your notifications, bozo. That's Brian's subtle way, or not so subtle way, of saying that. He probably will say something vulgar next. So while that runs, again, the only other step from a certification process is to once it's passed here. And what you'll find is that the passing, it's testing based off the hardware resources of this machine I'm running on. And so there's actually a good use case, obviously, to test it on using this tool on different devices. Hence, if you like, I have a Surface, obviously, I'll test it on the Surface. It's a lower powered ARM-based device and everything else. The tool, obviously, is doing this and testing it. So we're at 7:30, and what I want to be able to do then is let Brian show you then some of the cloud share stuff that, again, will be free for you all to test out and try if this is something that you want to go out and try yourself. So it's just validated the app. It's tested a few things. So why don't we come back in 15 minutes, and then we'll get about 30 minutes left for the cloud share demo just to be able to take you through a virtual environment. So thanks.
Okay, so I'm Brian, and as you know, that was Brett back there. But happy to be here. Great turnout, so thank you everybody for coming. My slides are going to be short. This is pretty much it. But what I want you to do is write down, take a picture, commit to memory this URL. It's ak.ms/ I know this looks a little long, W8, Windows 8, think of it that way, AD Cloud Share 7. And we're going to get into this now. I have this up here, so copy it down. Feel free to go to that link, but I'll be walking through that in just a second. Is anybody familiar with Cloud Share? Just get an idea? Nobody. Okay. Well, good, because we'll introduce it to you. So one of the problems that we often face, how many of you have PCs here but are not running Windows 8? All right, wow, fair number of you. Okay. So here's the thing. You can download and run Construct 2, as Brett was doing. You don't need Windows 8 to do it, but you do need Windows 8 to ultimately package up your application, because we have the SDKs, everything is built into Windows 8, so that's just part of it. Now, we recognize that a lot of times you might not have that, but we don't want that to hold you up either. And so CloudShare is a virtual machine hosting company, and through this URL, it'll land you on a blog post, which is a good thing because it's going to walk you through a lot of this stuff. And what we have set up are some virtual machines that have Windows 8. It has Construct 2. It has GameMaker. GameMaker, by the way, is very similar to Construct 2, which Brett was showing you. That In fact, they are incredibly similar in a lot of features, but they work just slightly different. So you might want to play around with both just to get an idea for which one, maybe speaks a little bit more to you. And it also has Visual Studio on it and everything you need really to get publishing. So it's a virtual machine. This link gives you an account for 7 days to use that virtual machine as much or as little as you'd like. But let's go ahead and walk through it, and I'll show you what you need to do to get started. So I've already opened up that link, and this is going to land. This is going to land on Keith's blog, and I know don't expect you to read that from there, but what this does is this goes through the entire process of setting up your Cloud Share account. Now, the way to get started with this, aside from just reading everything that he has to say here, but a little bit down this blog post, he has Let's Get Started, and specifically a register link right here for you to set up your Cloud Share account. Now, the reason why you need to click on this link is that ak.ms, it's sort of like a bit.ly. It sets up a promo code here that gives you that free 7-day Windows 8 virtual machine. And it knows not just to give you a 7-day account, but it knows to give you that specific Windows 8 machine. So that's why I wanted you to put in that link and then click specifically on this register button just to make sure you get the proper VM as part of your account. So what will happen here is if we click register, we'll get taken over to cloudshare.com. Now, in this case, I happen to already be registered, so I'm not going to go through this process. But all you have to do is register. You can put in your information here. Now, this is not a Microsoft product. I'm just pointing that out. This is CloudShare. But you could fill this information out, and it'll send you an email to verify your account. Now, I've already done that, so I'm just going to log in here with my credentials. Okay, now, by default, I've got a bunch of, every time I click through, it's adding another environment to my thing. So I've got a few environments here that I've got set up. But when you do this, you're only going to see one environment. So you can see here that I happen to have 3. And you can see some of these are, this one down here was a 1-day account, so this one will expire in 11 hours. The rest of these will expire in about a week because these were the 7-day accounts. So what is in this environment is a VM that we can use to develop on. So if I click the View Environment button, and by the way, when you launch this for the first time, you'll see that it's going to take a while because you'll see a progress bar, and it's going to be spinning up. It's going to be creating that virtual machine for you. So you won't be able to do it, the first time you do it, you won't be able to go this quick, right? It's going to take a couple minutes for it to set it up, but you can watch that progress bar go through. When it's done, you'll see this owned environments thing here that shows you all the environments you have. You can see right here it's still preparing, so in fact that's what you will be seeing. So if I were to click on View Environment, this is what I was talking about here, is that it's creating the virtual machines for me and it's going to take a while. I'm not going to wait for this one to finish up because I already have other machines that are running, so I'll just back up here and we'll go to my previous one, which is right down here. So just pretend, this one's getting prepared too. Oh, maybe I shut it down after my last presentation. That might have happened. Let me see. Or maybe I didn't set that one up. Let's go look. Let's look. Let's see how we're doing. Okay. This one's preparing too. Okay. I should have done this earlier. What they've done is they do a timeout on it. So if you don't use it within a certain number of hours, it'll automatically spin down that VM until you come back, in which case it'll start it back up again. So that's what's going on here. So let's see which one will finish first. Let's jump around here and see. Now, what's going to happen is if I scroll down and look at the VMs that get created here, the one that is of specific interest here is this Windows 8 Application Developer VM. I know that's probably a little small to read. This is only 28% done, so I can't actually connect to it. But if I click the More Details button here, you'll see that you have an internal IP, which you don't really care about, and then it'll tell you everything you need to know about your virtual machine. These are actually fairly decent virtual machines. They're 4 CPU, have decent memory and everything else associated with them, so it's a pretty nice machine to have. This is not ready for me to remote desktop in, but once it is, I've got 2 ways I can connect to it. I can connect to it through remote desktop. Right either above or below the internal IP will be the external IP or the domain name that it associates with your VM. And so I can copy that, and then I can just go directly to remote desktop if I'd like to, and then I can connect to it that way. Or you can click the View VM button, and that takes you to, I believe it's a Java-based, it's a plugin that they wrote to allow you to connect to your CloudShare VM that way. So it's really up to you. Obviously, if you're using Windows, probably sticking with the remote desktop is going to be your best bet. But if you'd like to do it in the browser, you can as well. So we'll just wait a second for this to finish spinning up. I'll go and see how the other ones are doing. And I've got a few other things we can talk about while this is going on as well. Oh yeah, this one's a little further. Okay, good. Anybody want to take wagers on which one is going to win? All right, no? All right. Okay, so while this is spinning up, we'll come back and we'll look at this VM in just a minute because it is a great way to get started with development. I had a bunch of questions that came up during the intermission, and if you'd like, I'd be happy to address some of those. Some of them might be of concern. Some of them were really around either copyright or code protection, advertising, and how some of that works. Is there interest in hearing about some of this? Okay, all right. Well, tell you what, I'll start with some advertising basics, and I only have one slide for that. So this is the only thing you needed from this slide was that URL. So if you didn't grab it, do it now. And really to address the advertising piece, this is obviously a big revenue thing for you to consider inside your applications. And so I'll take you to the developer portal, and I can show you this through what it takes to push an application out in my portal in just a second. But what I've done here is I've just taken a screenshot of the Microsoft Pub Center. This is my account inside Pub Center. I took this about a month ago, 4/18. And what we have, Microsoft Pub Center is our advertising portal for our application development. So if you're developing for Windows 8 or Windows Phone, you would create a Pub Center account, and that will allow you to use Microsoft Ads inside your app. You don't have to use Microsoft Ads if you don't want to. You could chop it around a little bit, and I'll explain how you might approach that. But it's here for you to use. And one of the things that we do make easy, I think, is we have controls that are very easy for you to drop into your project to make using our ads particularly easy on Windows Phone and Windows 8 development. But if you want to use AdMob or any other ad platform, you are free to do so. And whether or not they provide controls or ease of use, whatever it is, obviously is up to them. But it'll be up to you to decide how you want to do that. Some people leverage multiple ad providers. So in this case, I happen to have an ad inside one of my apps, and this was for the month of April up to that day, so about half the month. And I'll walk you through what some of these numbers are, and it's probably hard to read, but this right here is impressions, and it had a total of about 19,400 impressions of an ad. Now, the way ads typically work on applications is it's an impression base, which means the ad appears, you get paid, or probably better said is the ad appears, the publisher or whoever wanted that ad pays for it. And it's a bid system. So the prices are going to vary, which means the amount of money you make off those ads is going to vary as well. So we'll talk about that in just a second. So you can see I got about roughly 20,000 impressions, which means 20,000 ads were served. My current revenue for the month, I have a really small app. I'm nowhere near what Kevin is making on his app, so not very much. Now, the interesting thing here is I'm going to come back to ECPM because this is the most important number in this whole thing, but we'll come back to it. Total number of requests was about 45,400. That's how many times the ad control tried to get an ad, but there was none available, all those, right? So 45,000 requests is a lot more than 19,000 requests. So from a percentage standpoint, that's a fill rate of 42%. So that means that 42% of the time we were able to serve an ad. So what does that mean? That based off my keywords, sometimes there were no ads available. It could be that nobody was bidding on certain keywords that I happen to be putting in my app. So that would tell me maybe I should go back in and modify the keywords or the categories I'm using in my ads to something that might be a little bit more interesting and have a little bit more popularity. Or if I'm starting to get a low fill rate, I can also then switch ad providers if I wanted to. Now, the most important number here is ECPM. That stands for effective cost per thousand. What that means is essentially that's how much money you get for every 1,000 impressions of an ad averaged out. So you can see that in this case it's 73 cents for every 1,000 ads that get served. So me just viewing my own ad is not going to do me a whole lot of good unless maybe I have a page full of ads or something. But you can see it takes a while to get up there. And So eCPM, now, of course, if you're Kevin and you've got a game that's being played by tens of thousands of people simultaneously, then that actually could add up pretty quickly. But eCPM is the number that everybody uses to really compare how their ads are doing against ads of other platforms. So I could call Kevin and I could say, well, Kevin, what's your eCPM? I know you're making 30 grand a month compared, I'll switch if you want. I'll take his money, you can take mine. But ultimately, he has an eCPM as well. And so maybe his eCPM, it could be higher, it could be lower. But it's a way for us to compare. And I can then change my keywords around and maybe my eCPM goes up and I'm like, ooh, those are good keywords, right? Those are popular ones that people are bidding on. So that's a good thing. And so it might not seem like a big deal, but imagine if you are Kevin or you do have, even if my app, if I hit the better keywords and I drive that eCPM up to $1 or $2, that makes a huge impact on how much money I'm getting. So you could think of it from Kevin's standpoint. I mean, if you're trying to legitimately support yourself, that's a big deal. So actually, I talked longer than I meant to on this, but this is kind of an intro to the advertising. Construct2 and GameMaker have some of these ads. I think it's still in beta, but they have some of these ways you could put those ads directly in there. They've already tied into the Microsoft Ad SDK to make it easy. But this is a popular way people are going because free, a lot of people like free. And what I decided to do as an experiment inside one of my apps was to make an in-app purchase that removes the ad, right? So to kind of see, because I hate ads. I hate seeing the ads. So if there's an app I like, I will gladly pay the $1 or so just to get rid of it if I'm using the app. But what I found is almost nobody does that. Everybody's willing to tolerate the ads. So that's okay by me, too, if they're using the app. So a little bit of an overview to advertising. Any questions on that? I didn't want to, go too deeply on that, but is that helpful? Does that give you some context, at least, maybe to go out and think about how to approach advertising? Okay, any questions? No? All right. How about the other questions I got were somewhere around copyright or anything else? Is there anything I can answer there? Is there interest with that? Brett? Yeah, so, that's good. That'll be useful. So there's a couple ways we can approach this. I can go into my store account. You want me to do that, or do you want me to go into my Pub Center account? Store account. Okay. So what I've got open is my Dev Center account. You can see I've got my dashboard. This is what Brett had already walked through. But I've got a bunch of apps that either have in progress or apps that have already been released. These are the apps I currently have released in the store right now. And so this one by far, my Dark Skies app has the most users, has about 10,000 downloads. And if I click reports, what this will do is this will allow me to go through ratings. So a couple of people apparently don't like my app in the last 30 days. It'll show me the downloads per day, how many I'm getting, right? So generally about anywhere from about 30 to 40 a day, which I'm not complaining about considering the very niche nature of my app. You can see that my in-app purchase here is I'm up to about $13.27. You probably can't read that, which means I told you before it's a nice social experiment. How many people are willing to pay to remove an ad? The answer, not many. So at least for me. So anyway, there's a lot of metrics here that we could dive into. I can dive into the usage, which will show average usage per day, say over time. Let's see, what else can I do? Did you have a specific, Brett, idea of what you wanted me to? Okay. I could dive into specific ratings and see from what country people are rating it. Maybe I've got an issue with things recently. Maybe I'm not localizing it much. In fact, I admit I don't localize at all. It's English. I publish it. One thing you can do, you can go worldwide with your app and not localize it into different languages. It's really up to you to decide what you want to do. Obviously, apps are a little bit more successful if they do that, but it's a lot more work as well. But we can dive into all the specific ratings and everything else that were in my app. As well as looking in-app purchases. Also, there's some demographic information as well. Let's see if I can pull that up here. Let's see, where was that? Got to find that now. I know it's in here somewhere. Maybe they moved it around. Downloads, quality finance. Let's see. So there's a section in here somewhere about general app usage that would tell you the rough age range. Oh, here we go. Downloads by age group, right? So I could see, okay, how is this, basically unspecified male or female? So I could see that generally, this age range, which is pretty broad here, both the 22 to 40 and 41 to 55 are the general downloads, mostly male, and most of the users here are in the United States, followed by others, but then UK here and India and Russia. So obviously U.S., not surprisingly, is the biggest consumer of my app. And then some more specific, most active market segments and so on. Now again, my app is really small, so some of these metrics here are a little bit, there's not enough really for me to go on because it is a small app. But it is useful because it kind of tells you how you're doing with your application. It might change either keywords that you choose to use. It might change how you choose to market an application, and so it's pretty interesting. In fact, I was hearing a story earlier today. I wasn't able to attend this session, but at the East Coast Game Conference last week, there was a really interesting session about localizing applications, and apparently, and so now this is coming third hand because of the way the story went, but it was basically a case study of how Plants vs. Zombies. You ever play that game? My kids love that game. I love that game, actually. It's a lot of fun. It's a great game, but you're basically trying to stop an invasion of zombies coming at you, and you have to keep planting all these plants to take them out. So a lot of fun. Apparently, Plants vs. Zombies didn't do too well in China. Well, I don't think a lot of software does too well in China, but it really didn't. And so they ended up doing some market analysis, and they changed the way some of the zombies look to fit more with the cultural themes in China. And they also, I think, added some reference to the Great Wall of China, like either they're protecting it or they're coming from that. I can't remember specifically what it was, but their app sales went through the roof after they did that by paying attention to those local demographics and cultural facts of each area. So it's just kind of an interesting thing to pay attention to and to just to think about. Okay. What? Oh, quality, yeah. Okay, so when I click on this, what it will do is it will show me, in this case, what the crashes are of each release that I had. So I'm up to release 6, I think is, I don't have a whole lot. Apparently release 6 has crashed a little bit. And I could download, what I could do is if there are a couple of specific exceptions that are getting thrown, what I can do is dive into them and see how many times they got thrown. So in this case, this one was 7 times, 6 times for this exception, and so on. And what I can do is dive into this and get a stack trace of exactly where that happened. This is going to be a lot harder for you to use. If you're using Construct 2 or GameMaker, this is going to be, I don't want to say useless to you. It's still good information, but if you don't own the entire code block, that if you didn't write the whole thing, then it might be a little bit harder for you to necessarily go through all of this. But nevertheless, this is really helpful because just hearing that your app crashed or something like that doesn't necessarily do a whole lot of good. And then the most common reasons why your app is not responsive, and it will tell you exactly why the specific issues with either ending the task or some kind of activation hang. And I could download that, look at the specific stack trace to see what the user was doing at that time. So just something to, again, good data to come in here and look at. So a lot of stuff then, telemetry stuff for you to look at your app, and again, it just helps you make good decisions going forward. There is a lot of different hardware out there. Everything should work across platforms, but sometimes you never know if there's a different screen resolution slightly, or as Brett said, when you're running the test tools locally, I've got a Core i7 machine here, so it is pretty performant, right? It's going to perform well compared to the Surface ARM-based tablet. So it makes sense sometimes to have some different benchmarks or to try it out on a different piece of hardware if you can. And obviously we're here to help you with that if we can. And so before I go back and we see which VM won the startup race, I'll introduce one app at least just to give you some context. I'll admit I'm not much of a gamer. Well, actually I love playing games. I don't create some more compelling games. It's not what I'm good at. But but I created this app. This is just what's happened to be called Messier Object Explorer, and the Messier catalog is a catalog of all interesting things that Charles Messier happened to catalog in the night sky. So you can click on stuff, go around, and zoom in on different features in the sky. I happen to have the timer on, so it's going to be jumping around on different things on me. But this is the concept. Let me turn the timer off, and I'll just click on this particular one. And the cool thing with this is all written just with HTML and JavaScript. Now, how many of you are actual developers in the room? You consider yourself a full-time? Okay, so, wow, not too many people. Okay. And so this app took me less than a day to write. It really was not that hard. Admittedly, my work is done a lot easier because we support HTML and JavaScript-based application development inside Windows 8 as a native application. All of these frameworks, including Construct 2 and GameMaker, they're all JavaScript-based. So the point is, it's really easy to drag and drop these things and use them. So all I had to do is create this list view at the top, and that's what gives me that nice scrolling, and I could go look at different things in the sky. And this is all Worldwide Telescope. And Worldwide Telescope exposes itself through they make an HTML control. And if you haven't played around with Worldwide Telescope, it's a project from Microsoft Research. Has a really cool desktop application, so a thick, client application. But they also created a web-based JavaScript version. So I could drag and drop it in here, make a nice little catalog app. I put it up in the store. Again, it took me less than a day to make it. So there's, I admit I happen to know JavaScript and HTML, so maybe it would be a little bit more for somebody else who isn't familiar with it. But the source code, by the way, for this app is out on GitHub. Is part of what we call an API mash. It's a project that Brett's team and our other team has been working on. It's all different kinds of mashup style applications that are real simple. But the source code for this is up there. It's up on GitHub. If you just search for API mash, all one word, you'll find it, and you could feel free to look at it. All right, let's go back and jump into CloudShare. Let's see where we're at. All right, my environment is ready. Awesome. So notice now that this View VM button is active, and if I click that, it will let me go to the web portal. But if I click on more details over here, you'll see that we have a external IP address. Let me zoom in on that a little bit. We have the external IP address, or actually URL in this case, not an IP. But I'll copy that to my clipboard. And then also down here, we have an admin account, and I'll just click Show Passwords, and it will show you both the password for the admin account, and then also there's one called Administrator, and it will show it to you here. And obviously, if you're going to connect to a remote desktop, it's probably a good idea to have that. But I'll click Connect. And again, I'm just going to use the built-in remote desktop. If you don't have that, or you want to use the built-in web controller, you can do that, again, just by clicking the View VM button on the page. Let's see if this... Okay. Did I get that right? Yeah, I think so. Oh, there we go. Okay, use another account. And copy that password. Yeah, okay. I'll trust it. And might be my internet is a little slow, we'll see. But what this will do is I imagine many of you are going to be familiar with a remote desktop, I imagine, or if not, welcome to remote desktop. Very handy tool to have because it lets you connect to other machines. I know some people connect to their home machines and everything else. But what I've got here is a virtual machine that is running in the cloud. Now, it's still spinning up a little bit, so it might be a little slow, and obviously it's a little choppy because this is running, obviously over the wireless here and then out to the data center. So it's not going to be quite as fluid as it would be if it were truly local or native. But you can see this is Windows 8. So if you're running a Mac or you're running XP or Windows 7 and you want to develop or take that application you've written and push it out, you can do that very easily. So here we've got Visual Studio built in, we've got Construct 2, and we also have GameMaker as well. And if we drop to the desktop, where are you, desktop? Where are you? So was it over there? Did I not see? Oh, there it is. Thank you. I guess they kept it all black to make it, I guess, a little bit more performant. I didn't see it there. Okay, so what we've got here too then is Construct 2, and we have GameMaker. Now, generally speaking, I would probably recommend that you work with Construct 2 or GameMaker locally, just because, you know, it's probably going to be easier for you to work with it locally. But ultimately, when it comes to compile your application, it does need to be done on a Windows 8 machine. Now, one of the neat things, too, is if you have not set up a SkyDrive account, I would definitely check it out. Oops, I didn't mean to start that up. SkyDrive, if you haven't seen it, I imagine most of you might be familiar with SkyDrive, but the concept is it gives you cloud storage that can roam with you either to other PCs or through the web. So SkyDrive is a really useful tool for taking your Construct 2 game or any other code, and you would put that, if you're working locally, you would take that project and then you would put that in your SkyDrive account, and then it'd be very easy to open it up here, and then, you know, I could then open that project locally in Construct 2, compile it, and then push it up to the store from there. That's probably the easiest way to share files back and forth between your cloud share VM and your local machine. So any questions I can answer so far about this, cloud share? I think it's pretty cool, right? So it's these VMs happen to be 7-day, just to let you know. So, yeah, go ahead. Question?
Can you get the Windows 8 yet on Azure? That's coming for a 90-day trial, I know that.
Yeah, so good question. Windows 8 on Azure. So Windows Azure is our cloud platform, but no, we don't have, as far as I know, we don't have any plans to actually have Windows 8 as a virtual machine option in Windows Azure. That could very well change, I suppose, but right now the focus is all on Windows Server, or bring your own VM if you'd like to. But yeah, as far as I know, no, that's not going to be a native option like this is, to just spin something up and get going. By the way, the nice thing about this VM, I know I've said it already, but we did build it specifically for these types of workshops where you're going to want Visual Studio, you're going to want Construct 2, you're going to want GameMaker, you're going to want all of those installed, just so you don't have to go in and build them all, so and install them all. Yeah, but there are other questions? Yeah, go ahead. What is the benefit of cloud share? So compared to Windows Azure, Windows Azure is a great platform, first of all, but from a standpoint of being able for me to do a turnkey where I could say, here's a cloud share account for you to use, and here's the template VM for you to use, this is very much more of a software as a service type solution. Whereas Azure, if you're hosting VMs, is going to be a little bit more of an infrastructure play for you to build out back-end services. So cloud share, think of it is much more user-friendly. In fact, if you were following along with me and you had your cloud share, you'd be on the same page right now. Whereas if you were to actually set up your own more permanent type of VM inside Windows Azure, that would just take you a while to set up. But cloud share is great for this type of scenario, especially when you just want to build something and test it and play around with it, and then you're done in 7 days. Or you could keep paying for it if you wanted to, but that's the idea. One more question. Okay. Was there one more question? Yeah, go ahead.
Some other publishers who I won't name, I was curious, I know you didn't sell any of your games for $1.99 or whatever. What percentage does Microsoft take for an average game or app that's published? 30%.
Yeah.
One of the other.
Right. So, the revenue sharing is the 30%, and then at 25,000 it jumps up to 80%, where you keep the 70% right up till your app makes $25,000 in sales, and then your share then jumps up to 80%. So basically, we take a smaller piece for ourselves. Is that what you're asking? Okay. Yeah. So that's basically how it works. So once you get to 25 grand in sales, then your share jumps up to 80% at that point. You start at 70%, so you keep 70, and yeah, that's how it works. Yeah, definitely. And then obviously, if you give away your app for free, and then you ad support it, it's whatever agreement you have with whatever ad provider at that point. So but that can be a little bit different as well. So okay, great. Well, Brett and I are still here. We're happy to work with you. I know we're out of time, but this is CloudShare. I hope it helps. I hope it's something you can leverage, because I did see not everybody had Windows 8 machines here. But feel free to play around with it. I hope you got that link. But we're here to help answer questions, or if anybody wants to tinker and try something, we've got our own machines we can use, and we're free. Hit us up. We're willing to help you out. I do have my business cards up here. If anybody needs help getting an app done or has a question afterwards, feel free to follow up with me. I'm down here all the time in Charlotte, and I do a lot of app development with people, so happy to help you out. It's a lot of fun. And by the way, the promotion they got going on here with the IT account, it's really cool. If you want to develop an app, but you don't really want to necessarily put it out under your own name, I know sometimes it's a little intimidating. Publish it under the IT group's account, and that way it still gets out there. It still lets people use it. The proceeds that they get from it will go to charity, or if you want to, keep it under your own account. It's just kind of a fun way to get tools out there, and no tool is really too small. One of the guys that I work with in the Charlotte office, he wrote a SQL Azure code wheel type app where you get an error code back from SQL Azure, but you don't want to go look it up. You put it in, and it basically tells you this is the reason, that this is the specifics behind that error. So very simple little tool, but it's just something he made, and it's neat. So no tool is really too small. A lot of cool IT based stuff you could do very easily, but I hope it's helpful for you. And that's it. Thank you.